Today's show is mud plugs. Now this is something that's unique to dirt track cars. This is a mud plug. They're different styles. This one happens to be made out of aluminum. You get aluminum ones, plastic ones, or even have foam insert ones. What I'm going to show you today is the aluminum ones because that's the ones I run. We're going to show you how they fit on the car, how they go on the car, the mounts you can buy, and we'll even show you how to make some yourself. This is my right rear beadlock wheel. I've taken it off and laid it out here in the ground just so it's easier to see. Get a little sunlight, the HD looks a little better. Right now I've got my Duralite mud plug put on it. I really like the Duralites. It's a lot easier than making your own. It is a little bit more expensive, but this is an Arrow wheel. Arrow has their own brand of mud plugs. I just happen to like the way the Duralites fit a little better. If you notice, the Arrow wheels on the beadlocks, they already come with these little tabs made into the wheel that mount your mud plug with 3 Zeus fasteners. Now I did have one problem. The Duralite says it fits the Arrow wheels, but it doesn't fit exactly perfectly, and it didn't want to sit in there. So I've got a little remedy for you. If you look on the back, you see these big white washers. I got these at Lowe's. They're just a plastic washer, and they're fairly thick. And the little washer actually came with the beadlock. I'm sorry, it came with a mud plug. I took them off, put these big thick washers on, and then put the little plastic ones back on, and actually hold them on there. What this does is when I put the mud plug back on, it holds the mud plug off at an equal distance. Before, part of the mud plug would sit on part of this ring and it would get kind of crooked. One of the Zeus buttons would be tight, one of them would be loose. This way, all 3 are spaced exactly the same. I can get all 3 tight and I don't have to worry about this mud plug coming off. Now if you notice, I have another Duralite mud plug here, and it's a little bit bigger than the other one. The reason is this is a right front mud plug. Now unlike the beadlock one, I had no problems fitting it because I used the mount that came from Duralite. So let's take a look at that. You can see this aluminum ring, and it just goes inside the tire, just slides in, and it's got a little adjuster nut here. You turn the nut, the ring spreads out, and it grabs hold of the wheel, and it won't come off. It's in there real good. All you got to do is take your Duralite mud plug, and like I said, no problems with fitting issues. It pops right in there, like that. Tighten the Zeus buttons down, and you've got a good mud plug and a good sealer. I showed you the Duralite ones. Those are store-bought ones. So let's talk about how you can make some of your own. Now, the beadlock wheel, you're pretty much stuck with the wheel. You have to buy one or make a kit or something like that. So it's best just to buy one that already has the rings made into it, but you can make your own plug. This is one that we made earlier. What you do is you take a beadlock ring, you take it off the wheel, and this is actually a different brand beadlock ring. You need to make sure you use the same one that's going on the wheel so they match. And what I did is just laid it on a sheet of aluminum that I built the race car body out of, and I traced out the circle. Now you notice the circle here is actually a little bit bigger because this is a different brand ring. But if I had the same brand ring, the circle would match pretty good. Lay it on your sheet, trace out your circle, and cut it out. The only hard part really was matching up the Zeus buttons to the holes. For that case, I just laid it on the wheel, flipped the wheel over, and used a Sharpie to mark through the holes. We got our locations, drilled our holes, and put our Zeus buttons in. Now we use these because they have the little rivets and hold them in. They won't get lost, but you can just use regular old Zeus buttons. That's perfectly fine. For the right front, however, it's a little more difficult. This is one of my old right front plugs that we made. You notice once again it's bigger than the right rear beadlock ring. That made it a little more difficult because if you have a wheel that doesn't have a beadlock ring on it, then you can't lay the ring down and trace it. So the way we did this is I actually measured the diameter of the wheel where I wanted it to go. And if you can see right here, there's a little bitty hole in the middle. I took a piece of aluminum, drilled a hole and put a bolt in it, and we tied a string that there was the correct radius, tied the string to a marker and actually drug it around, made a nice circle, and cut it out. When I cut it out, I actually made it a little bit bigger than what it should have been. That way when I put it in the wheel, I had to trim it, but I made sure I didn't have any gaps. I just trimmed it a little at a time and set it down in there. Now this is a lot more work. This is the reason I have the Duralite ones now. They're expensive, but this was a lot of work, but it is a cheap way to get it. If you make your own mud plug for a regular wheel that doesn't have the beadlock ring, you got to have some way to fasten it to the wheel. So once you get this made, let me show you how we made the ring that goes inside the wheel. This is one of my old right front wheels. This actually has the ring we made. If you can see how tore up the wheel is, that's the reason I had to buy one. It's all wrecked and bent. All this is a piece of round bar, and you can get the round bar at Lowe's, Home Depot, someplace like that, Tractor Supply. There's a little bitty gap right here. That's where the edge is made. Mine doesn't have an adjuster ring to go in there, but as long as you've got your mud plug in place, there's no way it can come out. The mud plug locks it in. The way I made the curve in it, though, is I took a long piece of metal rod, this little round bar. I took an old wheel like this one, and I welded the round bar in here, and I just started pulling it. And I bent it around and around and around, and I bent it about a time and a half around again, and then cut it off. Even though this is smaller, because the metal is got a memory to it, it sprung out into this big ring that was something, I don't know, maybe about that large. Poked it down the wheel, poked it around, and worked it until I got it to where I needed to be, trimmed off the excess, snapped it in there, and I had my ring in there. Now these metal plates here that the Zeus button's actually attached to, I believe is a piece of an old air conditioner. All I did was cut it out, drill a hole in it, and weld it to the plate. Once I had that, I had my ring made, I had my mud plug made, and it cost me maybe $3 to have a mud plug in a car once you figure all the materials and things. If you go buy one from a store, it costs you a lot more, so if you want one on the car, I guess it just comes down to, do I want to spend the money or do I want to spend the time? Sometimes you do it the poor boy way, and sometimes you do it the empty back pocket way.